Hi, everybody. My name is Alex Cross. I am the program coordinator for the OutCenter of Southwest Michigan, and I use they, them pronouns, and we're excited to talk about voting this year and what voting will look like.
My name is Julia. I'm the HRC Human Rights Campaign lead in Kalamazoo. So we are going to go through quick introductions of what our organizations do here, why this election is super important and urgent, which probably does not need to be repeated a ton, and essentially how to vote from home in Michigan. You know, basics about the Michigan rules, going through the absentee ballot and how to apply for one, other resources, and final next steps. And throughout, we will be stopping for questions at certain points throughout the presentation, but if you want to put any in the chat, we'll also be checking that and answering those as we go, especially because we are recording the audio and the presentation. So if you don't want to like read anything out loud, just hit up the chat box and we'll be checking that throughout.
For sure. So as Julia mentioned, introductions, the OutCenter is the LGBT resource center that serves Berrien, Cass, and Van Buren counties. We are one of, I believe, 7 LGBT organizations across the state of Michigan, and our goal is to advocate for the LGBT community both personally through support groups and politically through advocacy work in private organizations and in the public sphere. So we are busy all the time. We have weekly support groups that are meeting virtually, as well as regular monthly events.
And HRC is a national LGBT advocacy group, and I am part of a branch that does work in swing states, in regions in particular. So I'm working in Kalamazoo. We're really focusing on the election. You know, we're focusing on making sure the LGBT community votes in November, supporting everyone in the area, and electing the candidates that we've endorsed in November. So we have a lot of weekly events. We have events like this one and phone banks, but we'll go into that at the end too. But it is pretty election focused right now. Oh, you're fine. So the urgency of the election, which again, I don't think it needs to be stated over and over, but Michigan went red by 10,704 votes in 2016. That's not a lot, that's not a big margin. So that number of votes meant a lot of things for the LGBT community in the US and in Michigan. I'm not going to go through all of these, but it has been a pretty constant fight to prevent our rights from being expanded legally, and to actually roll back on some of what has already been afforded to us. Yeah, so highlights include the trans military ban and a couple of other egregious efforts on behalf of, from the federal administration. Meanwhile,
was there any good news from 20?
I'll get to the good news after I really hammer in the bad news, because it is really urgent. Like, there is a lot at stake, and there's a lot at stake that we see right now in terms of the pandemic. Right now, you know, we see from the federal response to COVID-19, really lives are at stake here. And yeah, the lives are really at stake. The good news is, I told you I'd get there. It just takes a while because everything is a little bit bleak at the moment. But there is good news. You know, in 2018, we had a record high turnout for the midterms. We were able to elect a ton of progressive voices locally and statewide that have supported the Equality Act. Gretchen Whitmer, I think in her first week in office, ended up signing a an executive directive that protected LGBT state employees from employment discrimination. So we made a lot of progress, and we really want to keep that going in November, because we're going to vote, and we are going to tell you how. Essentially, in Michigan, Prop 3 passed that really, really helped expand voting access, essentially. So with this, and it's now seeming even more relevant with the coronavirus, but you can do absentee voting for any reason. You can register to vote at any time, including on the day of the election. You have an option to do straight ticket voting and click something that makes you vote all red or all blue, depending on which you prefer. And it strengthened provisions for military members. It was really spectacular, and we're going to be utilizing that a lot right now, especially because so many people are going to be voting from home, because ultimately right now it is the safest way to vote. And it's also honestly very convenient. Cool. So what does that mean for us? All Michigan voters, all registered voters, are receiving absentee ballot application forms at home in the mail. So that means every voter should receive a form that, when filled out, applies for an absentee ballot. So you fill out that form, send it back, then you receive your actual ballot, fill that out, send it back. Everyone should be receiving this application form, but if you have not already received it, we will go into options. There are a lot of online options. You can apply for it in other ways. But it is pretty easy. There are, because it's been made so easy to vote from home, the two options are voting from home or voting in person. Obviously, we're going to be going into the vote from home options, but it's just fantastic that it's been made so easy. And there are really 3 steps to voting from home given Prop 3. You get registered, or make sure that you're registered. You request your ballot, whether you got that ballot application form in the mail or whether you do it online. You request your ballot. And then once you receive your ballot, you then send it in to your clerk. And here are some dates to know. There's an August 4 election, a primary for a lot of offices right now. And then there's the November 3rd election. Right now, I'm going to focus especially on the August 4th election because that's a little bit more urgent right now. But a good rule to remember is you can request your absentee ballot at any point until the Friday before Election Day. So some people think that they missed the deadline, you know, there's no time to request their absentee ballot yet, but that's later than a lot of people think. You can request it all the way up to the preceding Friday. Meanwhile, you can register to vote online or by mail all the way until July 20th in order to register in time to vote for the August 4th election. So there's still 5 days if you're not registered to vote. But if you want to do it in person, you can register to vote all the way up to the day of the election. But, you know, better to do it online and make everyone a little bit safer. So yeah, just remember that most of these options are available online, but if you do it in person day of, that is okay too. And there will be some polling places available in person with safety precautions in place.
For sure. And one last thing I want to mention about this slide is that if you are going to register to vote in person, you must do it with your clerk. You cannot do it at your normal polling place. You have to register to vote with your clerk. And we will go into more details about that later on. But if you do want to register same day, you have to register at your clerk. And we saw for the presidential primary, tons and tons of people waiting in lines for 3, 4, 5 hours. Pizza was delivered in Kalamazoo. So if you can register online, please do so. But if you can't, for whatever reason, your town clerk will help you. So are there any questions thus far?
All right. I do want to say one more note on the most recent slide. One pretty big date to remember is that your absentee ballot needs to be received by your clerk by 8 p.m. on election day. So if it turns out that you applied for your ballot on time, you got your ballot, you filled it out, but you never sent it back, or you couldn't find stamps for some reason, whatever happened, maybe you never filled it out, maybe you didn't request it in time. You can send it by mail or in person. You can vote until 8 p.m. on election day. So yeah, that really is the ultimate sort of deadline, is 8 p.m. on election day. The clerk just needs to receive your absentee ballot by that time for it to count.
Great, so if there's no more questions, we're going to talk about my favorite website, which is mi.gov/vote. It is the online registration system for Michigan. So on this website, you can do a whole menagerie of things, and I'm going to go into all of them. But specifically, you can look up if you're registered to vote, where you're registered to vote. If you're not registered to vote, you can register here. If you would like to if you, for whatever reason, did not receive an absentee ballot application already, you can download and print one straight from this website. You can find your clerk's address, your clerk's mailing address to mail that application back. And then you can track both your application and your absentee ballot status, all from this website. So it is a fantastic website. I'm so glad it exists. And if you need to use it, you will be too. So you do not need a driver's license or state ID to vote in the state of Michigan. It is helpful, but it's not necessary. You can still, as long as you have proof of residency and you bring it to your clerk, then you are all set to vote. You will have to sign an affidavit, but you will be able to vote, which is awesome. Yeah. So to find out if you're registered to vote, you can go to this website, mi.gov/vote. I think I'll say it 100 times if I say it once. It is fantastic. And I will note that while you're here, if you download and print out an absentee ballot application and cannot get it physically to your town clerk, if you cannot physically bring it there, or if you cannot mail it there, you can take a photo of your absentee ballot application and email that to your town clerk. I would recommend you not do that, but if you're in a pinch and you really need to vote, that's a really safe way that's another way that you can do it. So let's say you go to mi.gov/vote. It's your new favorite website. You registered to vote. You're super excited, and you are ready to request your absentee ballot. So your absentee ballot application will look like the following. And if you have one at home, because you received yours in the mail and you weren't 100% sure how to fill it out before, follow along. If you have the printout, that would be awesome. So the top of the 2020 Michigan absentee voter ballot application, you will fill out your legal name and your voter registration address. That is on the top. And there are 5 sections to your absentee ballot application. So section 1 is who you are and where you're registered to vote. Section 2 is what election you are requesting this ballot for. So if you would like to request an absentee ballot for both the primary on August 4th and the November 3rd election, you can do that with 1 check. And that is awesome, instead of having to print out an application twice and then sending it and then hoping for the best again. We know that there's been some delays with the United States Postal Service. Bless their hearts. It takes, 2 weeks for a package to get to me from my mom in Connecticut. So do it once and save yourself the trouble. And at the bottom of section 2, you'll see future elections. A fantastic new way that you can vote is you can request a permanent absentee ballot application, which means every single election, primary, municipals, presidential, every election, you will get an absentee ballot application from the state. And that doesn't count as a ballot, and you don't need to do anything with it. For instance, if you get your absentee ballot application in the mail, but you're super jazzed to go down and vote in person, you can simply rip that up and throw it away. Nothing needs to happen with the application if you're not using it. But if you're somebody who needs a reminder in the mail to go vote and do something, or if you just love mail, this is a fantastic way where you can both always get mail and always remember to go vote. So I really recommend that you send up as a permanent absentee voter. Section 3 will be your voter signature. So that'll be your legal signature. It's the same one that, is on your license, credit cards, and you'll date it. So make sure you fill it out and the date is the date that you signed, and send it back. Section 4 is very important. So if you are registered to vote in Hudsonville, but you're going to school in Grand Rapids, and you are on campus, this is hypothetical, no one knows if they'll be on campus this year, and you want your ballot mailed to your address in Grand Rapids. I know they're close together. They were the first towns that came top of mind. You will put your mailing address in section 4. So where do you want your ballot mailed? It may not be the same as the registration, as your address where you're registered to vote, but it also can be the same. As long as you say, hey, town clerk, send this to me here, they will do so. And that's very important. If you are a college student and you are registered to vote in your hometown, you don't need to change your registration. You can just have your ballot forwarded to you where you are, which is great. So Section 5 doesn't apply to most people. Section 5 is if you are assisting somebody fill out their application. A great example of this is my grandma. She is now legally blind, but she still really loves to vote. She will vote in every single town election. And so when I assist her in filling out her absentee ballot application, this is where I will sign to prove that I am assisting her. And that is the entire application. It is 1 page. It's pretty easy to do. And remember, you should request your absentee ballot by Friday before election. And we'll pause real quick for any questions that people have on what your application will look like. Great, I love when there's no questions. That means we're doing a good job. So remember, that's your absentee ballot application. not your ballot. When your ballot comes, it'll be broken the way that it's typically broken down, normal in-person ballots. And you also have the great new Prop 3 changes that you can enact as well. So I will turn it back over to Julia.
All right, so I'm going to mention a few things that might be different than what you're used to. If you voted in previous elections, some of the rules have changed, and do a little recap and things to remember. But one thing that has changed is that you no longer need to vote in person for your first election. That did used to be the case, but it was changed even prior to COVID. So very grateful for that. You can vote absentee for no reason at all and for any election. You can register to vote and request an absentee ballot on the same day by going to the same website that we keep pointing you toward.
We're going to say it again in the next slide, I promise.
We'll say it in every slide. And also, college students can register at their home address and vote from the campuses like we talked about before. And then, again, this website, you can track your ballot. So if you're worried about the deadlines, if you're worried about getting your ballot in by 8 p.m. on election day, or if you're worried about applying for it in time, you can track both of those statuses on this website. You can track when the clerk has received your application. You can track when the ballot has been mailed to you. And you can track when your completed ballot has ultimately been received by your clerk. So yeah, if you have any concerns or anxiety about that, it is a great option to alleviate those concerns. It's like, it's like tracking your package, but instead of receiving a physical package, you get to contribute to democracy. Even better.
Yay. One last thing about this, if for some reason you can't navigate the website's down, your internet's down, you can always call your town clerk and ask. I've never met a town clerk that doesn't want to help you vote. So always do that as well.
Absolutely. So some things to remember that we did touch on before. Some of this slide really applies to in-person voting. So this is if you've missed the deadlines or if you just really wanted to vote in person. Yeah, it's safer if you do it at home, and we would really encourage you to do that just for everyone's safety. But ultimately, if you have to vote in person, just remember a few things. You don't need a photo ID or voter registration card, although if you have it, please bring it because it'll be way smoother. But you can just sign an affidavit and that will be okay. Also, if you are in line by 8 p.m., you must be allowed to vote. So we saw some shenanigans in Wisconsin and in Georgia. But if you are in line by 8 p.m., even if there's a huge line because there's only one polling place open in your area because of COVID, if you're in line, you have to be allowed to vote. So stick it out. Also, just another reminder that if you are registering to vote on the same day that the election is held, you do have to go in person to the clerk's office and not the polling place. Yeah, so those are just some things to remember when it comes to voting in person if you have to. And this slide is really just another pitch for our favorite website, but you can find applications to register to vote. You can find applications for your absentee ballot. You can fill those out online and send it in over email, or you apply for them in person. I mean, not in person, you get it mailed in. Also on this website are your clerk's locations and hours and the tracking system that we talked about before. But yeah, really a one-stop shop. And I also finally want to mention that there are some pretty accessible options. There are absentee ballot application forms in large print. There are these application forms in English and in Spanish. And really, the clerk wants to help you vote. If you have any questions, or if you're running into any obstacles, you can call them or email them, and they will be pretty responsive at helping you with that.
For sure. So next steps, you're jazzed up to vote. You want to make sure you're registered. You are ready to go. You know where to go. mi.gov/vote. Make sure all of your ducks are in a row and that we can have a thriving, fantastic democracy on August 4 and November 3. So go out and vote. And then if you are looking to be involved with the LGBT community of Southwest Michigan, join us at the OutCenter. We are always looking for volunteers for our events and sponsorship committee, and we always want people to come to support groups. So if you ever need support, check out our calendar at outcenter.org/calendar. And if you are interested in learning how to be a better ally to the LGBT community, join us on the 23rd on Zoom with one of my new favorite authors, Jeannie Gainsbourg, to talk about her book, The Savvy Ally. And if you can financially donate, I know that that's not always an option for everybody. So this is a small caveat that I think might be in my contract to say. If you can donate to the OutCenter, we would love you to help support our future. You can donate to the HRC. We have a great future ahead as well. So if you can, do it. But if you're looking to be involved in the process up to the election, Julia has some awesome offers for you.
Yes, because what I'm doing is really, like I said at the beginning, really geared toward the election. So if you want to get plugged in and help other people vote, forward these slides to your friends and family if they want to know how to vote. If the election is like terrifying you, or if you want to grasp onto the momentum that we got in 2018 and keep electing these fantastic leaders, you can join us. We do phone banking every week. We have events like this. We have a lot of ways for you to help centered around the election. Yeah, so yeah. Also, Shirley, were you asking a question? Oh, I thought I heard something. But if you guys have any questions, yeah, we're here.
Yeah, you can always email me or email Julia. Either way, we would love to answer your voting questions, and we would love for everyone to participate in the election. If you need assistance, if you need election protection assistance, please do not hesitate to reach out. They have assistance in English and Spanish, and the call centers are hopping on election day. They are ready for your call and they are ready to help. So jot these numbers down if that's something you are unfortunately afraid of, and you will get help on election day. Besides that, does anyone have any questions? And if you want, you can put them in the chat as well. Either one is good.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for coming. And really, it would be great to spread the word to your family and friends about this. If you feel like you're comfortable on how to vote from home, a lot of people get it hypothetically, but if they haven't done it before, feel a little bit uncomfortable actually filling it out and sending it out. And sometimes it's just easier to, leave their application form just lying there if they got it in the mail, and it's easy to forget about it. So please spread the word to your family and friends. Make sure that people have a plan for how to vote. And even if you don't want to help by making phone calls to strangers or by texting strangers or by plugging into what we're doing, really just telling your family and friends how to do this and helping them through is beyond helpful. Like I said, we lost by 11,000 votes in November, and that's such a small margin. It's going to be so vital and possible to change that. So just talking to your friends and family would be immensely helpful.
Awesome. And we will have another event like this closer to the November 4th election. And if there's no other questions, I will bid you all a good night and happy voting.